Funding for Smash Tomatoes is provided by the squared space that I call my shower. Stick until the end of the video to find out more. If there is one live-action Disney movie that has seen massive belated acclaim over the years, to the point where it can be considered a cult classic, it's Freaky Friday. Also Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I guess. And Beverly Hills Chihuahua. And okay, I guess a lot of live-action Disney movies have that status, but none of them has been as utterly and completely ignored as Enchanted. I thought it was good as a kid, but not much. Okay, fine, I'll drop the Sushi Last Perfection parody joke. 2007 wasn't exactly the best year to produce a critically acclaimed film. Giant franchises like Spider-Man, The Bourne Identity, Pirates of the Caribbean, and not Shrek were releasing their third installments. Meanwhile, hugely anticipated releases like Ratatouille 300 and The Simpsons movie or Night at the Museum were releasing. And then there were Superbad and Enchanted. Amazing films which didn't really spawn anything or come from anything, they just kinda silently slapped until someone decided to pick up Superbad and talk about how good it is because they laughed over McLovin for an unhealthy amount of time. Enchanted didn't have that fortune. I feel like most people have not revisited this film since they were young. As a kid, you see this silly story about a cartoon princess who is kinda stupid but falls in love with a guy in regular old Earth. But as an adult, you start to see the emotional intelligence, wit, and artistry in this underappreciated gem. So I figured, hey, if no one's gonna talk about it, guess who will? Smith. Nah, just kidding, it's me. Remember to subscribe. Here is why Enchanted is a subversive masterpiece. You know, the best introduction possible for this film is not a plot summary or anything like that, it's actually a look at the characters. Of course, starting with Giselle. You'd be amazed at how much her character tells you about this movie's theme and nuance, and the first dead giveaway is definitely the intro. Everything is animated and even the aspect ratio is different. They already established Giselle as the most possibly generic Disney princess between the first 3 minutes of the film, and it's dope. This film is really good at establishing what the daily life of these characters is in, like, seconds. You already know what these fictional characters are all about, and it's clear that there's absolutely no nuance to their personality. And so the movie obviously ponders, what if these flat characters were thrusted into New York? Well, they get pushed around, run over, they get robbed. For all intents and purposes, they were living in a fantasy, and it's amazing to see the way the writers involve Giselle's character as she begins to comprehend reality more. One of the best examples is her handle of emotions. At first, she's unable to understand negative emotions like sadness or anger or confusion, and at most she'll feel them for seconds. She can't even understand sarcasm. But as the movie goes on, she begins feeling these emotions and falling in love with the sheer realism of feelings, even if they are negative. Living in a fantasy means you wouldn't know what it's like to live. And even though these feelings, well, feel bad, they are necessary to evolve as people. A life filled with happiness and fantasy isn't a fulfilling life, it is vague and mentally dead. She's a character that evolves, where there are several examples of her growth, and yet there's another side to this coin. Robert. Compared to Giselle's introductions with her in the woods singing away at her dreams, Robert is introduced while he is in a boring business meeting getting yelled at. What's the word all reviewers use? Juxtaposition? There's a ton of scenes that compare the life of fantasy with the life in reality. Most presently, there's this scene where Giselle falls off a branch that is later replicated with a billboard, and in the branch variant, she rides off into the sunset with a new fiancé, while in the billboard variant, she just simply falls to the ground and hurts herself. Another example is how Giselle immediately trusts anyone, while Robert understandably doesn't even trust Giselle, to the point where he specifically requests Morgan to sleep in his room in order to protect her, just in case. And yes, that's a fully justified decision, don't worry. What I'm saying is that at the start of the movie, Giselle represents fantasy as much as Robert represents reality. Morgan is a divorce lawyer, he has no belief in the ideas of true love or anything like that, and his portrayal surely transmits this concept. Robert is against anything that isn't realistic, even if it's just in the slightest. Stuff like refusing a free apple or Giselle giving charity to an old lady for no reason. The same way that Giselle grows into the ideas of reality, Robert grows into the ideas of fantasy. This isn't all just happening because he is enchanted, pun unintended, by Giselle, but rather thanks to Morgan, his daughter. I think Morgan stands as the one connection between the life of reality and the life of fiction. Not only is she still a kid, but it's evident that Robert attempts to keep her as grounded to reality as possible, in lines like,
I'm only 6.
You won't always be.
And yet she still pushes the idea of taking care of Giselle, because she is a child after all. She's more willing to believe all these concepts that Giselle talks to her about. She still has hopes for life and dreams of childish stuff like knowing her mother. Or maybe easily believing that Giselle is indeed a princess. It's through the light and connection that she represents that Robert is able to begin believing more in fantasy. The wonder of a childlike mind and rose-colored eyes isn't something to ignore because it's gonna eventually go away. It's a state of mind that shouldn't be ignored. Nancy is admittedly an underdeveloped character. She could have gotten a lot more exploration, but two things are clear about her. 1. She ignored this aforementioned state of mind. 2. She has a flimsy goal of simply getting married. She's not shown to have many other ambitions despite running a clothing shop. She works at a place that is drab and grey, with the only source of color in the entire scene it appears in being a heart of roses that Giselle, who represents fiction, has two dopes to bring her. Even if it's not said by dialogue, it's made clear that she has suppressed fantasy from her life by force. She still expects Robert to somehow begin being charming. The life she wants is one filled with fiction. She's ecstatic to receive flowers and excited to go out to a literal ball, and it's nice to know that in the end she does get her dream to come true thanks to Edward. Edward is a child, look at it from whichever angle. Within the plot he acts no older than 13, and it's perfect for his character. He threatens countless of people with his sword, almost like it was that stupid plastic sword you had and you hit the wall too hard and then you hit yourself in the face with. This childlike demeanor is exactly what's expected of the fictional prince. He is naive, he is slow, but he is in love. Hold on to that thought for a minute, by the way, but what I'm getting at besides that is how Edward's fictionalism is what makes him such a great character, despite having little to no growth in the film, besides getting to understand that relationships are a two-way street rather than a single-line debacle that he had with Giselle, which we've already discussed. Mom, I'm playing on my sword again! Oh, it hurts my face! These characters actually form a line from reality to fiction. Notice the circle. Notice how this circle has characters who are all intertwined. These characters all have a connection. They are searching for love. Sometimes romantic love, other times motherly love. Even Nathaniel and Pip are looking for love. Nathaniel and Pip are minor characters, to be frank, but they still have these themes of fantasy and love ingrained into them. I dislike Pip. He is mostly comic relief, and his whole entire appeal is taken away by the constraints of reality while in the search to learn how to love other people. He doesn't learn quite by the end of the film, but I just can't get angry at a character with buck teeth. My brain is just not capable. As for Nathaniel, not to be confused with me, the Nate, emphasis on the, is also looking for the unrequited love from the antagonist, Nerissa. He eventually learns that love isn't about proving oneself to someone for approval, but rather an intimate, well, for lack of a better word, an intimate arrangement. You may be thinking, wait, what is Nerissa trying to love then? Nothing. She wants greed and infamy, but at no point does she seek the love of anyone at all. This is eventually what leads to her demise, which is great from a storytelling perspective. All these characters have good in them because they know or learn to love as they grow, yet this wretched woman only has lovable one-liners that doesn't really attempt to understand other people in any capacity. But damn, those one-liners are really good, except for at the end, where she does cause the one mistake in the entire film by repeatedly pointing out how unique it is for the maiden to save the prince, even though the audience can easily tell. But whatever, it's a minor thing, I just had to point it out for the sake of fairness. So you got this theme and this character-driven thing. Now you need to make it shine. So you use stuff like great animation, good outfits, and a soundtrack that rivals some of animation's best princesses. Note that Nancy is also the voice of Elsa, which means this might be the only person to technically have played the role of two Disney queens. The music in this movie is really good, not because of how it's composed, but more so on what it means for the overall plot. Each song has a reason for being there. They aren't just tacked on, and there's no songs there to keep the audience from falling asleep during a certain part of the movie. So let's go, song by song, see the importance that it has on the plot. True Love's Kiss. This serves as one of the main musical themes of the film. It plays repeatedly throughout the story in distinctive ways, and it sort of evolves with time. Originally, it's cheery and typical. It's used to show off the connection that Edward and Giselle have as they both sing the song numerous times, sometimes alone, sometimes in communication with each other. There's this line in the movie, finishing each other's duets, which refers to this song every single time. It means to be meant for one another, in some sort of Destiny My Other Half sense. It's genius because it's a trope of 2D animated Disney princess stories. This song is in part a parody of those songs from those movies. It's meant to set the scene for the most possibly generic story. The pretty maiden looking for true love in the form of a man, having dreams about it, talking to her animal friends who sound like children. I like that bunny, look at the animation, it's so clean. Anyways, it's standard. It's the movie setting the stage for whatever is about to transpire. Edward and Giselle used this song to find each other in a Marco Polo kind of way, and it's interesting that this song has no proper functionality within the scope of reality, often getting interrupted or modified. Most interestingly, when Edward sings to Giselle after finding her in New York, Giselle is reluctant to continue the duet. This is further emphasized by the use of the instrumentation, and that is to say, none. There is no chemistry within these characters because their goals and ambitions no longer align. The hardly-working song is also a broader look to tropes often seen with princesses. The more realistic animals who don't live in harmony is a striking contrast to the animated friendly children. Prior to this song, Giselle acts confused. She's not used to animals that are dirty or missing limbs. However, she makes it work. Reality isn't always perfect, but it's important to visualize solutions to the problems your fantasy might encounter, even if it's not an ideal situation. And by fantasy, I mean, hopes and visions, stuff like that. Optimism is good. Being in reality doesn't mean you can't enjoy your time. Visually, there's a lot of references to other princess films sprinkled throughout the film, and a great visual example happens during this song, in this scene with the bubbles. Personally, I like that Nancy shares a surname with Cinderella's mother-in-law despite being a more passive look at the character. Same goal, but different approach. That's How You Know is unique in the sense that it's fully diegetic, which means it's actually playing in universe along with all its instruments. Robert is never digging this song except for a brief shot of him bobbing his head, but it's a great contrast to Giselle, who is able to inspire others to live a little out of the ordinary. She sets up people in a second, hijacks bands and musicians, she even gets people to willingly interrupt their weddings to dance with her. I want to note that Robert specifically says it
don't dance, and I really don't sing.
It's gonna be important for later, but basically, she inspires a parade thanks to her outlook in life. And the song is super memorable and catchy too. I've had it stuck in my head since before I started writing this video. There's an orchestrated version of this one, which slaps by the way. This song marks the point in which Rob gets to understand the power of Giselle's perspective, even though it's fully justified a little later during the pizza scene. The pizza scene does have a special version of That's Amore, the good old "When the moon hits your eye like a beat pizza pie, that's amore," you know the one. It's a minor song, has no purpose other than pizza, cause, who doesn't like pizza? What even is a pizza pie? Dip this bit? Ever Ever After by Carrie Underwood is the closing insert song of the movie. It relays the themes of the plot in a fun way. The whole, it's cool to wish for happy endings even though life does kinda suck. But I enjoy it because it's very clever from a lyric perspective. For starters, it doesn't ever say happy ever after. It stays at ever ever happy, which encompasses a way broader and more realistic range of the happily ever after perspective. So, the original songs are pretty cool because they all are there for a reason, but what about the visual design? Well, there's a lot to discuss there too, but for the sake of brevity, I will center specifically on the outfits the characters use throughout the film. Characters like Nathaniel and Edward, who remain in the cartoon mindset, almost never change clothes unless it's for a visual gag. Fittingly, Robert mostly wears a suit or his pajamas, and Giselle has colorful and patterned dresses. I love the language the movie utilizes with its clothing. Giselle especially goes from wearing big and complex dresses to simpler, more mundane clothing. This is to visually represent how appealing reality is to her at X point in the plot. She evolves as a character not only to scripting, but also visually. As for the cinematography, I'm not gonna say much about it because I'm not really specialized in this aspect. What I am aware of is how pretty some of the scenes look. And that's mostly thanks to the idea of its usage of colors. Of course, New York is still using normal colors, that is to say gray and beige and gray and more beige and more gray, sometimes green. But it's also part to help with the contrast that you see in the animated world and everything like that, which is dope. But okay, let's say that's it for the visual department because I can't think of anything more because I'm not very good at this aspect unless it's, let's move away from this aspect because it's kinda boring. I love that this story finds a middle ground. It doesn't believe in happy ever after, but it also doesn't believe in never ever happy. And it tells you this with the development of the characters, but as I've already talked about, there's a million other indicators. But by far the most powerful and perfect of these indicators is within the final scene. So all the characters go to a ball they organize as a fun event for couples, and as I said already before, Giselle's outfits often represent the status of her mind. So does she go in a bleak dress because she's unhappy to have gone out with the prince? Does she go in a beautiful outfit to surprise the guests? No, she just goes on this. The most plain purple dress. This is by far the most realistic outfit she's worn thus far. I hear a lot of people really dislike this outfit, but I guess that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be simple, not heavily designed. It's addressed by all intents and purposes, made for the sake of being realistic, which is part of the themes of the movie. And this is only the beginning of what the movie sets up for its finale. Giselle wants to live in reality because she realized the nuance of life is greater than true love's kiss. Her values have changed, and not just her values, but also the values of the people around her. The writer showcased this by doing the unthinkable. Robert now dresses in this outfit. He believes in true love's kiss. But most importantly, during a brief moment where he and Giselle get to dance together, he happily dances, and he happily sings. The character that was introduced to us like a guy who couldn't let his child even have a dream to protect her from the pain of growing up, begins singing like the girl who just 3 days ago was ready to marry a complete stranger. The fiction got closer to reality, and the reality got closer to the fiction. This seems like a plotting, but it's actually a whole message. These two extremes don't fare well by each other. Of course, it's kind of amazing that they already said it before in the film that Robert does not like to dream. The fact that he allows himself to dream and live a little more in fiction thanks to Giselle is part of his growth, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's amazing, it's a great message. But there's one last hurrah for this idea. As the centerpiece of the ball ends, the villain interjects and he offers a chance to forget all the reality and go back to blissful fiction. And the sad part is, Giselle takes it. There's nothing sadder to Giselle than the point where they separated her from Robert. Because she realizes now that relationships are way more complicated than just going, I love you, and them going, I love you back. There's a lot of nuance to it. And it's because of the nuance of love that she realizes that, well, love is one of those things that make living worth it despite the dark feelings. Reality is scary, but you just should live it regardless. Don't run away, someone loves you. And as Robert actually delivers the true love's kiss, the villain gets desperate and resorts to her true form. A goddamn dragon! This is a debate the film is showing to you. Reality? Fiction? Which one do you believe in? This dragon, the most fictional aspect of the movie, is holding the most real aspect of this narrative hostage, literally. What are you to do? Stand there? No, this movie has a closing argument for this debate. You go up there, climb the highest tower with nothing but a sword in your hands, and you kill the motherfucking dragon. Embrace the little fiction that you can have in life. You're not picking sides, you are realizing that living in reality doesn't mean you can't have hopes. You're allowed to have ambitions, and you're encouraged to have dreams. As a channel all about fiction, you'd imagine I talk about cartoons and books and maybe anime, but what I truly want to inspire is this. The idea of going out there and killing your own dragon, and climbing your own tallest building. Life is not about happy or sad, it's about using these emotions to accomplish something truly amazing. And for such a beautiful message and such a nuanced story, why do I have to sit down here and speak about this for however long in the internet to explain it to all the audiences that just kinda didn't even care about this movie until I pointed it out here? Actually, any media for that matter, including Megamind or Shrek or whatever else Shafting Gas Pollutions has reviewed. Okay, full disclaimer, this isn't a critique of himself or his content. This is a discussion of the people who only see the good in media after watching these types of videos. Enchanted is the most baffling non-success I've ever seen. Truth be told, it did succeed, but that's mostly because its ability to air on TV repeatedly. Despite that, audiences aren't always analytical themselves, so they aren't able to fully appreciate this film. Well, more accurately, audiences are more unsure than unanalytical. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, in fact it's perfectly normal. When we have ideas, we can be sure about the way people will receive them. That's partially why my videos are so unfunny. Many people will chalk this up to validation, but I think that that's a strange word for the situation. I think people are searching for proper reviewers that actually analyze these films, because it's always easy to see if they are good or not, but why they are good or not is way harder to pinpoint. Sometimes you don't even see if they are good or not because you're not able to analyze some of these themes. I guess there's some form of fear involved. What if I'm thinking something that's idiotic? With media, you come to see that often we aren't bad at making opinions, but more so bad at voicing them. It's a skill that most people like me or Sharing and Profile Pic develop because we wish to make this type of content. Being analytical of films and fiction in general, people like us are often backed up by numbers and statistics. It gives us a voice which can help others feel more at home and comfortable with their opinions, as well as bring you some peace of mind. Yeah, am I tooting my horn too much for 3,000 subs? It's the same logic that makes ending explain a common phrase you see in YouTube thumbnails. I understand that sometimes media is confusing, but other times appeasing doubts and minor confusions can make us feel more understanding of media. Feel is fundamental in fiction, how you feel about a show or how influencers are able to transmit these feelings that you might have missed in days past. So even if it sounds like a complaint, I'm glad I get to make this video and help people make up their minds about liking this picture or any program really. Appreciating media is amazing, and if I can help even with the little reach I have, I know that I at least have something to be proud of. On another note, I'm a man of my word. I told you that I have a square space in my shower? Well, here it is! Use code BUNNYDUDE to access my secret catacombs, so where you think I hold my cadavers, but it's actually just toilet paper and shampoo.